Here is the question that trips up a lot of CISSP candidates. You have identified a risk and calculated the annualized loss expectancy. Now someone says, implement a control. But how do you know which control to choose? And how do you know whether to implement one at all? That decision gap is exactly what today is about.
That is the trap the exam is waiting to spring. Most candidates can calculate annualized loss expectancy all day long. But the moment the question shifts from measurement to decision, from what is the risk to what do you do about it, the wrong answers start sounding very convincing.
And in the real world, it is even messier. I have seen organizations spend $400,000 on a control to protect an asset worth $150,000. That is not security. That is security theater with a budget problem attached to it.
If you have been wrestling with how control selection actually connects to the numbers, this is the video where it all comes together. You are in the right place, and this part of Domain 1 is more testable than most candidates realize. Today we are covering countermeasure selection and cost-benefit analysis, the 5 control types, how control assessments work, and monitoring and maturity models. We will also break down the major risk frameworks: NIST Risk Management Framework, ISO 31000, Factor Analysis of Information Risk, OCTAVE, and CRAMM. This is part 2 of risk management, build on 1.9 before diving in. Here is who is with me today. Bella here. This one surprised me. I think it will surprise you too.
I'm Fenrir. There is a twist in this story that caught me off guard.
George here. I have seen how this kind of thing plays out, and it is something.
Good to have everyone. Here we go.
The cost-benefit rule for controls is not complicated when you strip it down. A control is financially justified when its annual cost is less than the risk reduction it delivers. That is the entire logic tree.
The formula the CISSP exam uses is straightforward. Take the annualized loss expectancy before the control, subtract the annualized loss expectancy after the control is implemented, then subtract the annual cost of the control itself. A positive result means the control pays for itself in risk reduction.
And this is where the exam will test you. If the result is negative, if the annual control cost exceeds the reduction in annualized loss expectancy, the correct answer is often to accept the residual risk, not to implement anyway. The exam is checking whether you think like a manager, not like someone who wants to say yes to every control.
Residual risk is the amount of risk that remains after a control is applied. No control eliminates risk entirely. The question is whether the residual risk level is acceptable to management. If the residual risk is acceptable, you document the acceptance decision. If it is not, you layer another control or transfer the remainder through insurance or contract. Bella here, one thing candidates often miss on the total cost of ownership calculation. You cannot just look at what it costs to buy a firewall. Implementation time, staff training, maintenance, and licensing renewals all count. The true cost of a control is always higher than the sticker price.
I have seen IT teams propose controls where the annual maintenance cost alone was 80% of the original annualized loss expectancy. Once you run the actual total cost of ownership math, the project dies in the budget meeting. That math should happen before the proposal, not during it.
Let me give you the exam trap on control types right up front. The categories are not mutually exclusive, and a single control can serve multiple functions depending on how it is used. The exam often asks you to identify the primary function, not all of them.
Preventive controls act before an incident. A locked door, an access control list, multi-factor authentication, their entire purpose is to stop a threat from becoming an incident in the first place. If the control succeeds, nothing bad happens.
Detective controls work differently. They do not stop the incident. They tell you it happened or is happening. Intrusion detection systems, log monitoring, audit trails, security cameras, none of these prevent anything. But without them, you are running blind.
Corrective controls come in after the fact. Backups, incident response procedures, patch management, system restoration, they are your recovery toolkit. When the preventive control fails, the corrective control limits the damage and gets you back to normal operations.
Compensating controls are the ones candidates most often misapply. A compensating control is used when the preferred control cannot be implemented due to cost, technology constraints, or operational reality. It must provide equivalent protection and be formally documented. It is a justified workaround, not a shortcut.
Deterrent controls are psychological. Warning banners on login screens, visible security cameras even when not recording, policy notices about monitoring. Their job is to make an attacker think twice. They do not stop a determined adversary, but they reduce casual attempts and establish legal standing.
Stick with me through the next section on assessments, because knowing the control types is one thing, but understanding how you verify they are actually working is where real-world programs either succeed or quietly decay over 3 years without anyone noticing.
Selecting and implementing a control is only half the job. The other half is verifying it works. Control assessments are the formal process for confirming that your controls are implemented correctly, operating as intended, and producing the risk reduction you expect.
This is where a lot of organizations stumble. They implement the control, check the box, and never look at it again. 3 years later, an audit reveals firewall rules that have not been reviewed since initial setup. Implemented does not mean effective. Those are two completely different conditions, and the exam tests whether you understand that distinction.
George is right, and Fenrir, this is one of the more testable distinctions in Domain 1. NIST. SB 853 provides the procedures for assessing controls defined in SB 853. It maps every control to 3 assessment methods: examination, interview, and technical testing.
Privacy control assessments add a layer that is easy to underestimate. It is not enough to ask whether your security controls are working. You also need to verify that your data collection, processing, and storage practices match your stated privacy policy and applicable regulations. Those are separate assessments with separate criteria.
The 3 assessment methods matter for the exam. Examination means reviewing documentation, policies, procedures, plans, logs. Interview means questioning personnel. Testing means running technical procedures against the system. Each method has different strengths and different blind spots. A complete assessment uses all 3. Candidates often see scenarios asking which method is missing when findings are incomplete.
The output is a security assessment report, the SAR. It documents what was assessed, what was found, and what the recommended actions are. The SAR feeds directly into the authorization decision in the NIST Risk Management Framework, which we will cover in detail when we get to the frameworks.
Continuous monitoring is the bridge between assessments and real-time security awareness, where an assessment gives you a point-in-time snapshot. Monitoring gives you an ongoing view of how your controls are performing as the threat environment changes around them.
The exam loves to test on the difference between KRIs, KPI, and KCIs. A key risk indicator is a leading indicator. It signals that risk is increasing before an incident occurs. A key performance indicator measures whether security activities are executing. A key control indicator tells you whether a specific control is functioning as designed.
Bella's point on monitoring connects directly to the risk register. In practice, the register is a living document, not a spreadsheet you update once a quarter. Every identified risk gets a row: description, likelihood, impact, current controls, residual risk level, owner, and review date. When the register stops being updated, the risk program is already failing. The document is the proof that management is actually engaged with risk, not just aware of it.
Reporting cadence is something that trips up candidates who think security reporting is one-size-fits-all. Operational staff need daily or real-time dashboards. Management needs monthly trend reports. The board and executive leadership need annual or quarterly strategic summaries that translate technical risk into business impact.
The escalation path is just as important as the reporting itself. An operational risk that crosses a threshold should automatically trigger a defined escalation, from the security analyst to the CISO, and from the CISO to the board if it reaches a material level. Without defined thresholds, critical risks get buried in weekly status reports.
Here is the exam mindset: monitoring without reporting is noise, reporting without action thresholds is theater. The CISSP exam expects you to connect all three: measure something meaningful, report it to the right level, and have a documented response when a threshold is crossed.
Risk maturity is the CISSP's way of asking how grown-up is your risk management program, not just whether you have one, but whether it is documented, repeatable, measured, and actually improving. The gap between level 1 and level 3 is the gap between firefighting and running a security program.
The maturity model concept borrows from the Capability Maturity Model Integration Framework. The 5 levels go from initial, where everything is reactive and undocumented, through managed, defined, quantitatively managed, and finally optimizing, where the process continuously improves based on measured data.
At level 1, every risk incident feels like an emergency because nothing was anticipated. There is no process, just people reacting. Most small organizations live here. The exam often presents scenarios at this level and asks what the first step toward improvement should be. The answer is almost always formalization. Document the process before you optimize it.
Level 3 is the practical goal for most organizations. At this level, risk management is documented, consistent across teams, and understood by the people executing it. You do not have to be optimizing yet, you just have to be repeatable. Many Fortune 500 companies operate solidly at level 3 and consider it acceptable.
Level 5 is the continuous improvement loop, where metrics from your monitoring program actually feed back into how you select, implement, and retire controls. The risk register is not just a tracker, it is a driver of process change. You are using data to improve the program, not just to report its current state.
The honest, real-world picture. Most enterprises are at level 2 to 3. Getting to level 4 requires a significant investment in metrics infrastructure and executive sponsorship. Getting to level 5 requires a culture shift that most organizations are not ready to fund. Know the model for the exam and know the gap between the model and reality.
Now let us get into the frameworks. The CISSP exam tests your ability to recognize the purpose and structure of each major risk framework, not memorize every clause, but understand what problem each one solves and when you would use it.
NIST Risk Management Framework is the one you need to know most deeply for the exam if you are targeting any federal or government work. It is defined in NIST SB 837 Revision 2. The 7 steps are prepare, categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor in that order, and the order matters.
Prepare was added in Revision 2, and it changes the entire framework. It covers organizational setup, governance structures, risk tolerance statements, and the groundwork that makes the other 6 steps executable. Before Revision 2, organizations would jump straight to categorization and then wonder why their authorizations kept failing. The prepare step was the missing piece.
ISO 31000 is a completely different beast from NIST Risk Management Framework. It is not prescriptive. It does not give you step-by-step instructions. It provides principles. and a framework that you adapt to your specific organizational context. The key thing to understand about ISO 31000 is that it is designed to integrate risk management into every organizational decision, not isolated inside a security team.
Factor Analysis of Information Risk stands for Factor Analysis of Information Risk. Where most frameworks help you score risk qualitatively, Factor Analysis of Information Risk produces a dollar-denominated output. It decomposes risk into two variables: frequency of loss events and probable magnitude of loss. The output is a range of annual loss exposure expressed in currency, not a red-yellow-green heat map, but an actual financial range that executives can evaluate against business objectives.
Factor analysis of information risk is powerful for communicating with business leadership because executives understand dollars. Telling a CFO there is a high risk is abstract. Telling them there is a 60% probability of a loss event with an expected range of $1.2 to $3.8 million in the next 12 months, that gets attention and budget approval.
OCTAVE Operationally Critical Threat, Asset, and Vulnerability Evaluation was developed at Carnegie Mellon's Software Engineering Institute. The distinguishing feature is that it is self-directed. The organization's own staff conduct the assessment rather than external consultants. It is designed to build internal capability while producing results.
OCTAVE has 3 variants worth knowing. The original OCTAVE was built for large organizations. OCTAVE S was designed for small organizations with fewer than 100 staff. OCTAVE Allegro is a streamlined version focused specifically on information assets. It is faster to run and does not require the full organizational workshops that the original demands.
CRAMM is the one that surprises candidates. It sounds obscure but appears on the exam with some regularity. CCTA Risk Analysis and Management Method was developed by the UK government in the 1980s. It is highly structured asset identification, threat analysis, vulnerability assessment, and produces detailed control recommendations. It is qualitative and typically used in government and critical infrastructure environments.
Framework selection is commonly tested on the CISSP exam. The right answer depends on 3 factors: what problem you are solving, the size and structure of your organization, and your regulatory context.
For federal systems, NIST Risk Management Framework. For international compliance and governance integration, ISO 31000. For quantitative board-level reporting, Factor Analysis of Information Risk. For internal self-assessment with operational staff, OCTAVE Allegro. For structured government environments with legacy compliance requirements, CRAMM. The framework serves the context, not the other way around.
Here is the anchor for everything we covered today. Every framework, every control type, every assessment method exists to answer one question: are our security decisions well-informed, documented, and proportionate to the actual risk? If the answer is yes, the program is working. If the answer is no, no framework label changes that.
Drop in the comments which risk framework does your organization actually use in practice. NIST Risk Management Framework ISO 31000 something custom. We read every answer, and the patterns across the community tell us a lot about what the next deep dive should cover.
All right, quiz time. Let's find out what stuck. Think through each question carefully before you answer.
Quick ask before the quiz. Hit like if we earned it, and subscribe if you want more. That is all we need.
An organization calculates that a new intrusion detection system costs $40,000 per year to operate. Before implementation, the annualized loss expectancy was $90,000. After implementation, the annualized loss expectancy drops to $60,000. What should the security team recommend? The correct answer is D. accept the residual risk, the control cost exceeds the risk reduction.
An organization cannot implement multi-factor authentication due to a legacy system limitation. They instead require a 4-character minimum password with a 30-day expiration cycle. What type of control is this? The correct answer is A, compensating control.
A security manager wants to communicate risk exposure to the board of directors in financial terms, showing the probable frequency and magnitude of future loss events. Which risk framework is best suited for this purpose? The correct answer is D, factor analysis of information risk. Factor analysis of information risk.
Strong work on the quiz. Here is what we covered today. Countermeasure selection starts with the cost-benefit formula. If the control costs more than the annualized loss expectancy reduction it delivers, the correct answer is to accept the residual risk. Never implement a control just because a threat exists.
The 5 control types, preventive, detective, corrective, compensating, and deterrent, each serve a distinct function. On the exam, identify the primary function of the control described, not all the functions it could theoretically serve. That distinction matters when the wrong answers are designed to confuse you.
Control assessments using examination, interview, and testing verify that controls are both implemented and effective. A control that exists on paper but is not functioning provides false confidence. And in enterprise environments, false confidence is the most dangerous risk state of all.
The frameworks each solve a different problem. NIST Risk Management Framework for Federal Systems. ISO 31000 for governance integration. Factor analysis of information risk for quantitative board-level reporting. OCTAVE for internal self-assessment. CRAMM for structured government environments. Match the framework to the context, not the other way around.
Watch the next video. CISSP 1.11 covers security governance, how organizations align their security programs with business objectives and legal obligations. That video ties everything from Domain 1 together, before we move into Domain 2.
Subscribe so you do not miss it. Every video in this series builds on the last, and Domain 1 is the foundation the rest of the exam stands on. Stay sharp out there.
Professor Erica, signing off.